Doc Martin embodies everything that is still sacred in dance and electronic music. He's not here to create a fashion line off his success, and he's not here for the IG likes. He's here for the music and to share his passion and love through his genre-bending sets with you all. He's true to himself and respectful of those that have come up before, with, and after him, who have stayed true to their roots and to the essence of the culture. When I think of Doc, the words "be with the music" come to mind, and I think that holds true. Doc shared his experiences from the early days of Winter Music Conference, now Miami Music Week, and some of the legendary parties that we still hear whispers about today. A special moment for me was running into him on the dance floor at Treehouse, which was once the infamous Groove Jet we all hear about in Miami. I ran into him during the Lee Reynolds and Porky back-to-back set, just before Rodriguez Jr. came on. Doc and I exchanged a hug after previously doing the interview a few days before, and we shared a few words. He stayed for both of those sets, supporting his West Coast brothers as well as Rodriguez Jr., all the while with a smile from ear to ear. It was really special to witness and gave me hope that there is still that sense of community and artists that are there to support one another and remain for the music. I hope you all enjoy this episode. Doc is a really special person. He's done so much for the industry and for the culture and continues to be a guiding light for those who stay true. We're here at Winter Music Conference, or now Miami Music Week, and it's been a journey. It's the 35th anniversary here, and I would love to hear your story of what Winter Music Conference or Miami Music Week has meant to you, and why it is what it is.
It's come so far since the first time I came, I believe, was 93 or 94. And basically, it was a artist platform for singers and dancers. You had a lot of showcases, a lot of freestyle and hip hop. The only people representing dance community at that time were, I guess, myself from the West Coast came out. Masters of Work, Todd Terry, Roger Sanchez. Who else? There was one. And I believe a couple of DJs from the UK. That was all that was on the house side of it. The rest of it was completely freestyle and like pop music, to be honest. The first gig I played in Miami was for Luke Skywalker at his nightclub here, which was wild because, you know, they were used to Miami bass, and here I came in with house music, and I had break beats, which they really loved, but the house music thing wasn't such a hit. And I also remember that conference just because it was just getting started. Danny Tenaglia was playing, and there must have been like 15 of us there. There was no, and I played with Richie Hawtin, same thing. There was nobody in Kyoki. And then 2 years later, it just blew up for our type of music anyway.
What was the shift that made it blow up?
I think a lot of it was maybe the eight of us going back and saying we should go check this out. There was something called the New Music Seminar in New York before, which was like the house music mecca, house and early techno. There would be every club in New York just slammed and people would go to that. Once that stopped, there was no conference. So Winter Music kind of filled that gap, and I think for a lot of people on the East Coast, especially Northern, the weather, from Chicago, getting out in March when it's still kind of, you know, not the greatest weather in these places, and getting on the beach for a week, and I think that was kind of the main draw. And then once labels got involved, and Strictly Rhythm and Nervous and all these labels got into it, and then some from the UK came in, started doing parties, it made it more, I think, palatable for people that weren't necessarily in the music industry to come out to it, which kind of helped elevate, you know. There was many legendary parties that took place.
Wow. So once the labels really got in and got behind it, it's really started to elevate the prowess of Winter Music.
Well, it was I would say it was a thing of labels, dancers, community, Even locals here, I don't think there was anything like that before. I could be wrong. I mean, it just kind of pulled everyone from around the world. And also people coming from Europe where the weather's not so nice at that time. They love coming to Miami and eating Cuban food and hanging on the beach and going dancing in their sandals on, a daytime party. But then at that time, I don't think there were a lot of clubs, so there was a lot of makeshift clubs. What is now the Jerry's Deli used to be probably the most happening nightclub here.
Really?
Yeah. And the names escape me. I'm going to get crucified for this because I lived many nights in there. It was a gay club, but they would do like magic sessions with Tony Humphries, Louis Vega, and Dave Morales. And that would be like the place to go. There weren't tons of parties, but every party was slammed because it was kind of an effort from everyone to be. There's one party tonight. We're all going to be there, and it was like.
So it wasn't an after hours spot or anything. It was full blown.
Yeah, it went to like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah, I just every time I go to Jerry's Deli, I kind of cringe a bit because I saw a lot of stuff in that club. But
those walls could talk.
And then other labels like Ovum, Josh Wink's label, got involved, and they did phenomenal parties. Magic Sessions continued. Nervous Records did their thing. Even some of the smaller old New York labels like 8 Ball was out here, and Cult Records, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew, and then they started booking DJs from Italy and UK and Amsterdam, and it started growing from that. Then there was raves happening during that, like in little ghetto spots here that would totally go off. It was great.
So kind of how Wynwood's transitioned into what it is today. It used to be an area where they would have these pop-ups.
It was a very independent thing before. Like labels would come and put their own money out and work with venues. Some venues were cool, some were a little shady. I remember playing a party for the Shelter here. We're only on the right turntable, the sound system worked, and on the left turntable, only the left part worked.
Oh my God.
It was kind of nuts, you know, and no one did anything to fix it. No one cared from the venue. They're just like, okay, whatever. But
they were, as long as the music's good, people were happy.
It was an epic party. It was funny because you only got 50% of the sound at any time, but
so
the dance floor would move from the left to the right depending on which side you were playing on. And to all the hotel parties that took off, and then Fountain Blue, I think, is very worthy of a mention. That was the meeting place. That was where the conference took place. You had to have a badge to get to the pool, and the pool's where all the business went down. You'd come out with records, all new promos and stuff like that.
For DJs, that's where the business would get done. Like you would either get put on, or you could hand your mix to someone else.
Yeah. So about the Fountain Blue, anyway, that was the meeting place, definitely. All the DJs were there. Dancers can get close to people they would go see at clubs where they wouldn't be able to at a nightclub scenario. And a lot of friendships were made. I have friends from '96 I still call on the regular, still friends with, whether they're in the industry still or not. A lot of solid relationships. And just, you get the promos. That was the main thing for DJs like myself. I'm a record fiend. I spend hours in record shops, even to this day, to be able to get stuff ahead of time and be able to break music, and yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And I want to touch on this point that you brought up earlier, where the DJs, they started booking DJs from Italy and Europe in these earlier days. And Miami sits at this very interesting point geographically between New York and Europe and South America. So, in your opinion, how has that impacted the scene?
I think it really did in a big way impact the scene, because people started coming from everywhere. I was meeting people from Brazil, like Puerto Rico at that time, all over the place. But yeah, I remember when JD Plastic Dreams came out, that record got played 3 times a night at every party. It was like the biggest thing to hit, and kind of broke him, I think, globally, because all the DJs went back and looked for that record. Wow. And I swear to God, like 2 weeks after, it was at #1 in the British charts. It was something that impacted that, and Music Express by Express 2 was out at the same time. So those two records were the big records of that conference. And I remember like picking up a copy of Music Express just on a whim before coming out here and having it and being able to play it. And people were just going nuts on those two records everywhere. Every party, no matter whether it was deep house, techno, even trance DJs are rocking, Plastic Dreams. It was just like insane. This is where records came to get broke. And if your record did well out here, it would hit a lot of different musical genres and scenes, and it could blow you up globally. And this was before, you gotta remember, before DJs were on jets flying all over the world. There was a few DJs that would fly, to different places.
So this is before DJs are on jets and setting, like there's maybe a few that are doing it. And this is also like before things like Beatport, things like Instagram, where now people are able to plug their songs in and it can get distributed pretty widely. But it seems like Miami Music Week and Winter Conference back in the day was kind of that precursor and distribution point to launch people's careers.
Oh, definitely. There was labels from all over the world, and there was like BMG and big labels. So a thing like Plastic Dreams could literally get licensed to 12 different countries.
Wow.
Back then you could make a record, I could sell 15,000 copies at $3 a pop, and then you don't really have to tour. The pressure is not on DJing. You can be creative on that. But for myself, I've always had a full schedule and will always do so. It was pretty incredible, because if we put in perspective, at that time in '93, there was Masters of Work, Dave Morales, Marshall Jefferson, a few DJs from Chicago, New York, myself from the West Coast. I would even go to England to play, England had their own DJs. Mm-hmm. It was a thing, like going to New York. New York has their own DJs. What do they need you for? California, we have DJs, So once it started going in that thing, and I think another thing to really mention, I think Merck, Oscar G and Ralph Falcon really put Miami on the map, with Danny being here at that time as well. Those guys just made records that were just, every record to me was phenomenal for that time period,
I'm a huge fan of Oscar G. When I used to live in New York, I would see him every time he came. And I think it is worth mentioning what him and Ralph Falcone have done down here for the Miami music scene. I don't think it would be in the place that it is without them.
No. I remember the first Masters of Merc party.
Wow, really?
And it was this tiny place, and you couldn't move, and it was uncomfortable, but it was like a rave pit somewhere, the energy in there, because it was so maybe the size of this gallery.
How many people? Packed wall to wall?
Maybe through the night, 600-700 through the door. I mean, not at one time, but it was, once you had a spot, you dare not go to the bar or the restroom.
Because, oh my God, you'll lose it.
Yeah, and we started bringing Merc out to California out of that because of here,
Wow.
And blowing them up there, and I'm sure they got to New York, and Oscar's still rocking on big time, and Ralph's doing his things as well, making records. I just don't think maybe the newer crowd really understands what they're about and how they helped lay the foundation for this whole thing, especially Miami. I mean,
I wanna touch on that. What do you think is the gap there with people not understanding? Because they have such a legacy here, and not just them. I'll broaden this up.
Of course.
Even for artists like you all and your school of DJs that came up, that have been a part of Winter Music Conference and Miami Music Week from the beginning. What is there a gap? Do you see a gap, and what do you think is the reason for it?
Oh boy, I'm gonna get shot for this. There is. There's a big gap. Once things become a full-on business, the last thing people pay attention to is the music. Now I think it's about your social media presence. Are you going to buy followers? Are you going to organically just doing silly things sometimes to get attention? I've always just been with the music. I think the music. I think The quote I always use is there's 100% of the crowd, and sometimes it's better to have 10% of that crowd who's fanatical about music and what you do than trying to get the 90% that moves on to the next thing the next year when it comes around. And I've been very fortunate. I've had people, now it goes generational with my crowds in New York and LA and even here. People are bringing their nieces and nephews and kids, and it's pretty wild actually.
It's amazing to see. You see that a lot in Europe with families bringing their kids in, and I think that's a testament to who you are as an artist and like how you've impacted people.
And I think everyone has the right to go out and have a good time and express themselves any way they want to. You know, if I wanted to be that bitter old guy, I'd say there's too many culture vultures out here, you know, but I'm not. I've met a lot of the newer kids like Mochak and all them, and they're all really cool and sweet, you know, and humble, and power to them, you know. They can get up there and do their thing. If they can use social media as their tool to get their word out, I think that's not such a bad thing. I like to use social media to get the music out myself, you know. You can reach a lot more people, but I think now there's so much noise, and I feel like I'm in a walking infomercial every time I go on Instagram or Facebook, you know.
For sure.
So it's good to have that 10% that are focused on what you're about and what you're doing.
For sure, I couldn't agree more. It's cutting through the noise. I want to shift and ask. We were talking about how much you've been traveling, right? And as a legendary artist in the space, that has to weigh on you, like emotionally, physically. Like, what are some things that you do to stay focused and stay at the top of your game?
Well, I'm fanatical still. I'll listen to music like 4 to 6 hours a day. Wow. It's like part of my routine now. Coffee, music, and go to the grocery store with music, come back studio. That keeps me energized. You know, I might listen to 1,000 bad tracks to find 2 good ones, but those 2 ones have people like holding their heads like, oh my God, what is this? Traveling, yeah, you got to get your rest when you can. I'm still as energized as I was when I started DJing, so I've always told myself that once I lose the passion, it's time to get out, because it's really not fair to your crowd or the people that come to support you. I'm a clean teen, so no drugs, alcohol. I don't even smoke, so that helps me a lot with recovery. And I tend to get an extra day here and there just to go see the city and chill and catch up on rest.
That's awesome. That's good. So keeping to a schedule that works for you. And you're obviously super enthused about what you do. You're super passionate about your career and the impact that you've had. And you've been doing this for such a long time. What keeps you going?
It's still having the passion and the fire. And a lot of people that started when I started have given up. They've seen younger people come up and do that, but they don't understand they can still be a part of all that. They don't have to like sit in the corner and act bitter and talk about how modern music was better then than it is now. You know, there's great music coming out. There has been, even through, I call that lull of 96 to 99. There were still good tracks. And just being fortunate enough to travel the world and see different cultures and play in villages and everything from sleeping on a tent to a 5-star hotel, you know, it's all life experiences that I think everyone should experience, for the better or for worse.
And is there anything you would have wanted to tell yourself when you were starting out that you wish you knew now, or any advice that you would give your younger self back in '93 that you wish you would have been able to give?
Yeah, I don't regret anything, and there's been a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but maybe just to be a little more aware of your surroundings. And you know, there's always certain people in the industry that'll come at you when you're hot, and then they just lose your number when you're not. And I'm not about that. Like, if I make friends with somebody, my circle is small, but if I'm really friends with somebody, I'm always going to be friends with them regardless. And also maybe to get a little more rest when I started going to England. I spent many days being awake naturally, just going to record stores and gigs and not sleeping and doing 3 shows in a night, and you know, just crazy flying from Mexico to Manchester, get off the plane and jump on the decks, you know, stuff that's just not healthy.
Any coffee?
Really gonna start drinking coffee the last like 6-7 years.
Oh wow! So
Get out of here.
you've been doing that all without caffeine.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank God they invented sugar-free Red Bull.
Plug right there. Cool. Doc, thank you so much. I'm gonna pass the reins over to Will. I know he's gonna have some questions as well.
He looks like the tough interview.
Yeah.